What's the nature of your emergency?
Welcome back to the Tactical Living Podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Wilton, joined by Sergeant Wilton. Clint, how are you?
I'm excellent.
Today, we're going to talk about something that, as you listen to this, I know is going to be 100% applicable to you, and it can literally be a key that you can hold in your back pocket to be able to use in your defense and in order to make sure that things kind of go the way that you would want them to go once you understand it. I was having a conversation with one of my best friends, and he was so emotional and so upset because he hired a coach. It was supposed to be a 6-month agreement. He started working with her. He realized it was not going to be working out. He tried to let her know that. And she said, well, you're going to have to pay me regardless of whether or not we coach together for the next 6 months because you said you would. Then when that tactic didn't work, she tried to use some emotional persuasion, trying to make him feel bad in terms of accountability and blah, 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 which it had nothing to do with that. And he then messages me. We're always voice messaging, so I can hear the emotion in his voice, and he's really worked up, and he can't do what she's asking him to do. That's the easiest way for me to confidentially still hold his information. And I'm very calm about this, and I explained to him the very simple way that he can exit this, and I give him some non-legal legal advice when it came to his contract, which he sent to me, and it was incredibly vague. And, he was worried about the fact that they were on a Zoom call, and the Zoom call was recorded when he said he would work with her for the next 6 months. And long story short, he has about 92 legal ways to be able to exit this. We re-verified everything with AI software, and we spelt everything out together. And at the end of that conversation, he was so relieved. But it got me thinking about the fact that in the beginning of that conversation, he didn't know something that I knew. And it also got me thinking about everything with this presidential election and all that has transpired in such a small amount of time, and the people that are going batshit crazy. And I'm sitting there calm. And the biggest difference is that I know information that they don't, right? And when I say I mean you as you listen to this as well. Because if you're listening to somebody who knows absolutely nothing about what they're talking about, then you're the one who's calm in that situation, whereas the other person is emotional and heated. And I can pull this into a personal level because, Clint, this happens between you and I a lot as well, right? Something will seem volatile or of upset, and then one of us is usually incredibly calm, actually, right? And when you're armed with information, not only is it fantastic when it comes to peace of mind, but one of the ways that I have found to be able to accumulate more of this information is to always make sure that I'm listening to both sides and I'm educating myself on both sides, right? I have absolutely no trust in somebody like Obama, for example. However, I have his book, right? I've read what he has to say, and that helps to embetter my argument when you understand both sides of the story.
I really incorporate this into just the first responder realm all the time, and I tell my guys this is, are we there to be emotionally invested into an incident or to take sides whether this person committed the crime or didn't commit the crime, or say we're taking all the information from both sides and developing, okay, well, this is factual, this is the law that coordinates to it, this person's in the wrong or this person's in the right, and that's how we address those situations.
Now, I'm not necessarily talking about things on a moral level, right? But I'm talking about things that we know for factual data. On a moral level, it's quite different because it becomes very easy when you do know the truths of something and you're vindicated in your morals and your beliefs to become emotionally advanced, let's say, when you see something that differs from that moral viewpoint. However, when people act on emotion, that doesn't have anything to do, sometimes morals could be intertwined with it, but when people act and react emotionally, a lot of the times it is because they have failed to be able to seek out that knowledge. And it's really I've been paying attention to this over the last 3 weeks or so, and And it's been very interesting to see this concept play out over and over again, because I'll go in and let's say that I see a video and I see there's all these little angry reactions on it. I'll go in and I'll read what people have to say. And it's, for the majority of it, it's just lack of information. And it's so disgusting too when we are talking about things politically and you're seeing the things that they're spitting out of their mouths have to be derived from like what mainstream media is saying, which a majority of that is also incorrect or lacking valid data that they just choose to omit, right? And then it's just being regurgitated into lies that are being spread. That's, I love how Trump had made up and coined the term fake news, because we have fake data that's being spread all over the place all of the time. And it does not take a lot of effort or a lot of energy nowadays to be able to seek out the validation and the understanding of what's true.
Yeah. And with especially like in that media realm, like, you got to look at it as a business, and same goes with your friend is, she has a business that she's running and he's a customer that's partaking in that business. And like these media outlets are, if they're not presenting things that are catching people's attention and spinning it the way that they want to, that align with their own agenda, like they're going to lose those followers and lose that money coming in. So they have a whole business mindset compared to actual factual mindset, which is completely ass backwards for how media should truly be.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I'm thinking about when I learned under Dr. Mark Atkinson, and something he used to always say is, it's not for me to tell you, it's for you to discover. And I really loved that he said that, because it would be a piece of information that it would be like when you're in school and then a teacher repeats something and then they very obviously repeat it again because it's going to be on the test. To me, every time that he coined something like that, it would be, okay, Ash, take notes and then, further research this for yourself. And I think the same is to be said with all things in our life that we might find contradictory to common belief, common practice, something that doesn't really strike us too well in a comfortable way. That's information. Like, further research it on your own. And then also, when you do that, you're armed with the data. A great example of this is tariffs, right? I had to explain what a tariff is, how tariffs work, how the implementation of tariffs might impact the everyday American citizen, to both you and to my father. And that's because all you hear is the surface level of what it is, but most people don't understand the history behind tariffs and how it's actually a very healthy and wise thing that most countries understood and understand far before the United States and have put into practice for years on end.
Yeah, and having that information, being able to gather it and being able to present the factual basis type of things, is you're not spinning it. You're what you're doing is factually explaining how these sources and out whatever it is that you're looking into works, and being able to bring in that factual information to say, like, well, this is what it is. This is what they're saying, but that's not true. They're taking half truths and applying it to make it more enticing.
Yeah, another example of this is President Trump and his pardons of the January 6th prisoners, we can call them prisoners. And, during arguments, I had heard, 6 police officers died on January 6th. And I'm like, okay, for somebody to want to say something like that and then post it, like it's now infinitely attached to your name. That's curious, because I didn't hear that there were 6 officers that died on January 6th. To me, that means like an officer was murdered, right? Or like, so then instead of me like, you're dumb, right? That was my initial response. So that to me is information. So that meant that I needed to go and then seek out the further information to understand, like, where are they coming from? Oh, I see. There are 6 officers that died thereafter, but it had nothing to do with January 6th at all. And, the whole pardons, like, I do agree that there could have been some further investigation, and the Trump administration said that there was and continues to be in terms of individual pardons. However, that's just another example of information. Something was contradictory to my understanding of things. And also, it's in that particular regard, it's very difficult to even know, because Biden's J6 administration, their task force, they actually deleted most of the valid information that we would need to know in order to be able to validate those concerns anyways. However, that's just a prime example of how gathering your own information and then using whatever that trigger was as the source and the reason why, instead of just, getting upset and creating an argument, so to speak. Because when you are armed with the information, like when I figured out what the true answers was to that question, for example, like the last thing on my mind was to go back to that post and to start an argument with that person, right? It's just like, oh, that person's undereducated in regards to what they have to say.
Yeah, because at that point, you're just arguing with a wall who's already made up their mind, and they don't want to do the research or uncover that information that is the reality behind what's happening.
Yeah, and if you didn't want to do that, another simple tactic is to simply ask questions, right? So I could have gone to that gentleman and then replied like, oh, who were the 6 officers? When did they die? And how did they pass away?
Yeah.
That in and of itself would have invalidated his statement.
Yeah, and that would have made them do their own research because they're going to have to look up to provide answers to those questions, and they're going to start saying, well, and they're going to completely invalidate themselves.
Yeah, and a lot of the times people don't realize just how much emotion we're carrying every single day by partaking in those social media arguments.
Yeah, you're overfilling your cup in this negative way because you're all you're doing is feeding that beast and feeding that negativity.
Yeah, I hope you've gotten some value out of today's episode. If you have, do us a favor, drop a review, subscribe down below, and as always, know that I'm sending you a long, tight hug from my home to yours.